All right, so let's start at the absolute beginning. What the hell is a peptide? Because if you spent more than 5 minutes on TikTok or Instagram lately, you've probably heard people talking about BPC 157, MOTC, CJC, GLP-1s, growth hormone peptides, and suddenly you're looking at a bunch of abbreviations and just wondering what any of this actually fucking means. So I kind of want to fix this with a series. No biology degree is required. No pretending every peptide is some miracle compound. I'm going to break this down, what peptides are, how they work, and why they're getting so much attention, and what the research actually says. So let's start with Peptides 101. So what is a peptide? The easiest way to understand peptides is to start with amino acids. You've probably heard of amino acids. If you've ever bought protein powder or supplements, amino acids are basically building blocks. Your body uses them to build proteins involved in everything from your muscles and skin to enzymes and countless other biological processes. I'll take a few of those amino acids and connect them together in a specific order. That's peptide. A common definition considers peptides short chains of roughly 2 to 50 amino acids. Once these chains become larger, we generally start talking about polypeptides and proteins. Think about amino acids like letters. The individual letters don't tell you very much. Put those letters in the right order, and suddenly you've created a word. Change the order, and you can create an entire different word. Peptides are similar. The specific amino acids and the order they're arranged and determine what peptides can do. This isn't some weird new concept somebody invented on social media. Your body already naturally makes peptides, a lot of them. One of the most famous examples is insulin. Insulin contains 51 amino acids arranged into two chains connected together. And insulin has been used medically for more than a century. Another example is oxytocin. Most people know oxytocin as the love hormone because of its role in bonding, but also plays important roles in childbirth and other physiological processes. So when we talk about peptides, we're not talking about one drug or one category that does one thing. We're talking about a huge family of signaling molecules with completely different functions. And some peptide-based medicines are essentially versions of naturally occurring molecules. Others have been modified by scientists, but why do we modify them? Sometimes that natural molecule doesn't last very long in your body, so researchers may change its structure to make sure it's stable, extend its half-life, change how strongly it interacts with the receptor, or alter how it's delivered. And that brings us to how peptides actually work. So here's probably the easiest analogy in the entire video. Think of many peptides as messengers. Your cells have receptors. The peptide interacts with the appropriate receptor and delivers a signal. You'll sometimes hear this explained as a key fitting to a lock. It's not perfect scientifically, but it's a good way to visualize it. So different peptides interact with different receptors, and those receptors can activate signaling pathways inside the cell. Some peptide receptors belong to a massive family called G protein coupled receptors, or GPCRs. You do not need to remember that though. All you need to understand is this: the signaling starts the outside of the cell, the receptor receives it, and the cell starts doing something in response. And different peptide hormones use different receptor systems, so don't think every peptide works through one universal pathway. It's one of the reasons this field gets complicated so quickly. Two things can be called peptides and have completely different effects. Now let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions. Are peptides steroids? No, they're completely different classes of molecules. Take testosterone, for example. If somebody injects testosterone, they're putting testosterone directly into their body. Peptides generally work very different. Many act as signaling molecules that interact with receptors and influences a biological pathway. For example, certain compounds called growth hormone secretagogues can signal the body to release more growth hormone. They're not growth hormones themselves, and they're definitely not testosterone. This is also where people can get unrealistic expectations. Someone hears growth hormone peptide and immediately think, oh, I'm going to get big. And that's not how this works. Something affecting growth hormone signaling does not suddenly make it equivalent to anabolic steroids. The mechanisms are different, the magnitude of the effects is different, and the evidence for different compounds varies dramatically. That's going to be a recurring theme on this channel. Mechanisms do not automatically equal results. Another common question is, why do so many peptide drugs come as injections? Your digestive system is really good at breaking proteins and peptides apart. It's literally part of its job. So if you swallow many peptides, digestive enzymes can break them down before intact compounds reaches circulation. And even if they survive digestion, getting a large water-soluble peptide across the intestinal wall can be super difficult. So that's why many established peptide medicines are administered by injection. But here's an important exception. Not every peptide has to be injected. Researchers and pharmaceutical companies can modify molecules or use special formulations that improve oral absorption. There are also peptides delivered through other routes. So the quote peptides equals injection isn't a universal rule. It's just a common challenge with peptide medicines. Why are people so interested in peptides? This is where things really open up, because different peptide-related compounds are being researched or used medically across completely different areas. You have metabolic drugs and GLP-1 based medications. You have compounds that affect growth hormone signaling. You have peptides being investigated in areas involving inflammation and immune signaling. There are peptides associated with neurological research, mitochondrial peptides, sexual function medicines, and then you have compounds all over social media like BPC 157, TB 500, MOTS-C, SS31, CJC 1295, ipamorelin, C-Max, Selenk. The list goes on, and these do not all have the same level of evidence, and that's super important. Some peptide medicines have decades of clinical use behind them. Others have human clinical trials. Some have mostly animal research, and some have early just laboratory research. Some have become incredibly popular online despite the limited clinical evidence. I'm going to distinguish between those every single time we cover one, because saying research suggests doesn't tell you much unless I tell you what kind of research we're actually talking about. A human randomized controlled trial and a study in mice are not the same thing. Peptides aren't magic, and this is probably the biggest thing I want people to understand before we get deeper into the series. Peptides are not magic, like I just said. There isn't an injection that suddenly replaces nutrition. It doesn't replace sleep. It doesn't replace training. It doesn't repair every injury. And just because a biological mechanism sounds impressive doesn't mean a compound has been proven to produce meaningful results in humans. I think that's where peptide content online gets dangerous. You hear, this increases that pathway, this increases this, which theoretically should cause this. And 3 sentences later, somebody is presenting the final result like it's proven. No, we're going to separate those things. Sometimes in research, it's exciting. Sometimes it's extremely promising. And sometimes the evidence is actually pretty weak. I'm going to tell you which is which. And that's really why I'm making these videos. I'm a first responder. I understand what it's like working long shifts, training when you're exhausted, sleeping weird hours, trying to recover, trying to stay in shape, and still having life outside of work. So obviously I'm going to talk a lot more about research involving recovery, metabolic health, performance, cognition, sleep, longevity. But you don't have to be a cop. You don't have to be in the military. You don't even have to work nights. If you're just a normal person who's curious about peptides and you're tired of Googling something and getting an answer that sounds like it was written by a biochemist, you're in the right place. So if you remember absolutely nothing else from this video, remember these three things. Number one, peptides are basically short chains of amino acids, and your body naturally uses peptide signaling all over the place. Number two, different peptides can do completely different things because they interact with different receptors and biological pathways. And number three, just because something is called a peptide doesn't mean it's safe, effective, approved, or backed by strong human data. And that's why you have to look at each compound individually. And that's exactly what we're going to do, one peptide at a time. What is it? How does it work? What does the research actually show? What are people getting wrong? And I'll explain all of it without making you feel like you need a medical degree to understand me. And if that's something you're interested in, I want you guys to subscribe. And in episode 2, we're going to start breaking down individual compounds. I'll see you at the next one.